Hello and welcome to this evening's show. Now tonight we take an insight into congenital heart disease. We meet a 14-year-old girl who has been living with this disease since her birth. Now she had surgery as a baby and now requires more surgery in the next year. And on top of this, she has now developed scoliosis, which also requires surgery. An incredible young lady who will be joining us very soon with her mother and telling us about the challenges she has faced throughout her inspirational life. So let's kick off the show this evening and find out what exactly is congenital heart disease.
In a healthy person, the heart is responsible for providing the body with blood that has been resupplied with oxygen so that the body can continue to function. It's a continuous process. On the right side of the heart, the right atrium, the heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body. The blood passes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle and then is pumped through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary artery, which takes the deoxygenated blood to the lungs where it picks up oxygen. This oxygen-rich blood comes back into the left atrium of the heart through the pulmonary veins. The blood passes through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, which pumps the blood out through the aortic valve into the aorta. This is the main artery that takes this oxygen-rich blood to all the different parts of the body. Once the body has used all the oxygen from the blood, it is pumped back into the right side of the heart and the process continues. Within the healthy heart, there is a partition called the septum that divides the two sides of the heart and prevents the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood from mixing. With every heartbeat, the valves in the heart open to allow the blood to flow freely in one direction, but they then close completely to prevent any blood from leaking backwards.
So Doctor, we're just going to look at congenital heart disease in children today. And I mean, just in general terms of this, what would be a definition of congenital heart disease?
Congenital heart disease, as it explains on the definition, it's a condition which is there at birth, and it relates to more towards normal working of heart. So it's congenitally malformed or defect at birth in heart working and heart structure. And that's generally the common definition which is used.
Okay, I mean, how common is this within the UK?
In UK, the general figures are about 9 per 1,000, which means, just putting in a local perspective, which means in a hospital like Daisy Hill, which has 2,000 deliveries per year, we would expect to see about 18 to 20 children.
Is that quite high or quite low?
It's one of the commonest birth defects. So we tend to see quite a lot, sometimes at birth, and sometimes it is referred in from our GP colleagues to our outpatients.
Are there some things known to increase the risk of developing congenital heart disease in a baby?
We don't exactly know the exact causes, but there are certain other factors which can lead to increased risk. And I can give you some common examples. For example, genetic conditions like Down syndrome. Children with Down syndrome would have higher risk. About half of the children born with Down syndrome would have congenital heart disease. If mom had infection during pregnancy, German measles, a flu-like symptom, early pregnancy, that can also lead to higher chance for development of congenital heart disease. Other things like if mom has diabetes, and I'm not talking about gestational diabetes, I'm talking about type 1 or type 2 diabetes, which is well in advance before the pregnancy, can have a higher, about 5 times more commoner in moms with the diabetes, not a gestational, but type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Some mothers would be on medications for other conditions like epilepsy, mothers who are on medication for epilepsy, they may have higher chance to get that. So these are the common risk factors, higher risk factors to develop congenital heart disease.
I mean, when is this diagnosed? Would this be during a pregnancy through ultrasounds, or would this be after the birth?
Most commonly, these are diagnosed antenatally during the pregnancy at about 18 to 20 weeks anomaly scan. And sometimes if it is already known, is there any other children or any other family member, there would be another special scan for a fetus earlier stage and can be diagnosed. But in some instance, it's not diagnosed in pregnancy, and we only find out shortly after birth with signs and symptoms.
Okay. What are the signs and symptoms of that?
In babies, it's fast breathing, fast heartbeat, excessive sweating, tiredness during feeding, and a bluish tinge around the central or peripheral part of the body, which is in medical terms it's called cyanosis. So these are the common signs and symptoms, and those, if it comes early on, it can be picked up at the time of birth or shortly after birth.
And there's many types of congenital heart disease, but what do you find in the UK as the most common types of this?
To know the types of congenital heart disease, we need to understand the structure. And in common terms, in our human heart, there are 4 chambers and 4 valves. So the most common types of congenital heart disease in UK and Ireland is a septal defect, which means essentially a wall between the 2 chambers, there's a hole there. And that's the most common type we come across at birth and afterwards as well.
I mean, staying with that then, the hole in the heart, does this require surgery? I mean, what impact does this have on a person's life?
If it all depends on the degree of the defect. So if the defect is mild to moderate, most children they don't need any surgery. However, they would need a prolonged follow-up in local pediatric clinic or general practitioner clinic. Children with a moderate to severe congenital heart disease would require intervention, medication, and follow-up by the cardiologist, pediatric cardiologist.
I mean, for those babies and children that do require surgery, what benefits after surgery do those children see?
Well, number one, they see an improvement in their signs and symptoms. They also see improved quality of life, and they see reduction in their the complications which can lead to further heart failure and chest infections and development delay and all those things. So they see those type of improvement post-surgery when they get this surgery done.
Is there any prevention for congenital heart disease?
Because in vast majority of cases it's there at birth, so the prevention has to be before birth, which is in the pregnancy. So we know that most in all pregnancies you need to limit the intake of alcohol and cigarette and drugs, and when the advice is not to drink during pregnancy. There's also an advice to take folic acid and also to consult your local general practitioners if you are taking any new medication, if you're changing any dose of any current medication, and also to consult your GP or hospital staff if you think you have come across any infection during early part of the pregnancy, and that is the first 10 weeks essentially.
Okay, and I mean here at the Southern Trust you also have fantastic services for children dealing with congenital heart disease, but there has been some recent developments within the Southern Trust. Tell me about the developments.
Southern Trust, both in Craigavon and Daisy Hill Hospital, we follow all of our local children in our local hospitals in conjunction and in consultation with our regional colleagues in cardiology. In my personal caseload, there's a large number of children with congenital cardiac lesions. In Southern Trust, we have other measures as well, both in Daisy Hill and Craigavon. In a child with a complex cardiac lesion which required surgery, we offer them a free, an open access passport, which means they can come and go any time of the day or night if they require to be seen immediate on an immediate basis, they can be followed up. So they don't need to wait for outpatient appointments. They can be followed up in our ambulatory wards, both in Daisy Hill and in Craigavon. We have our ambulatory wards are open from 8 and up to 10 o'clock in Craigavon, and from 9 to 5 in Daisy Hill. Recently, only from last week, we have extended our ambulatory opening hours in Daisy Hill up to 9 o'clock, so that these children who are attending schools, other appointments, they can be facilitated more so outside those hours, so they can be seen in evening time.
Fantastic. Well, Doctor, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was your definition, but now let's look at someone who has lived through this experience in the US before we speak to someone closer to home.
I'm a neonatologist at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. I'm here to tell you about a new newborn screen that is done on apparently healthy babies and involves the use of pulse oximetry. If we find a low reading on the pulse oximeter, then the babies are referred to get diagnosis. With diagnosis, we may be able to pick up a group of conditions called critical congenital heart diseases. You have heard V. Kennedy's heartbreaking story about her daughter, Taryn, who died of an unidentified total anomalous pulmonary venous return, TAPVR, a critical congenital heart disease that could have been found through screening, although the information about the screen was not available at the time of Taryn's birth. Screening should be done after 24 hours of a newborn's life. Because of this screening, we recently found an apparently healthy newborn before discharge with the same life-threatening condition. Miss Furella's baby, Abe, was able to have corrective surgery before discharge from the hospital and is doing fine now.
Que todo había salido bien. Yo le di gracias a Dios por todo, porque todo salió muy bien.
I would say to all moms out there, before bringing your baby home, after they've been born for 24 hours, ask the hospital, ask your pediatrician, I want pulse ox on my baby, and I want you to follow the rules set by the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with the American Heart Association.
Chloe had open heart surgery when she was just a baby and now faces another health battle. In the last year, 14-year-old Chloe has developed scoliosis. Now, the inspirational young woman needs more open heart surgery within the next year. Now, Chloe, described by her mother Brenda as positive and inspirational, is determined not to let anything hold her back and fights every day to live life to the full. And Brenda and Chloe joins me now. How you staying? Welcome to the show. So Chloe, we'll speak to you in just a second, but I want to talk to your mum Brenda first. Brenda, take us back to Chloe's birth. When she was born at Daisy Hill Hospital. When Chloe was born, everything seemed fine at that stage, even though she was born 3 weeks early.
Chloe was born on a Saturday night, had no problems at all with the birth. The next day she was fine, she slept all day a lot, and one of the midwives came on and was a wee bit concerned about her colour. I still wasn't concerned at all, I just thought I had got a good baby.
Yeah.
She took her way down to special care, and within about 5-10 minutes we were sent for. I was on my own, John was away home with Natalie, and when I went down they told me that Chloe had congenital heart disease. I hadn't a clue what that was.
I mean, whenever you were told that she has this, I mean, what was going through your head, not knowing what it was?
I just hadn't a clue.
Were you scared at all?
I was frightened because I was there on my own, and everybody was fussing about, and they were getting her ready to go in the ambulance, and I wasn't allowed to go with her. It was blue flashing light.
From that point of noticing a change in colour of the baby, from that stage it was go, go, go. right up until the ambulance, and then even from the ambulance she was taken to the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast. The doctors said at that time as well that they didn't know whether this was a life or death situation.
They didn't think she was going to make the night.
Were you knowing of that?
Yes, they told us. They didn't keep anything from us. My dad and John we followed the ambulance down there, and we didn't know.
I mean, sitting in that car following the ambulance of your newborn baby, it must have been terrifying.
It was, and they, you know, we could see the ambulance in the distance with a flashing light, and we, you know, we just didn't know what was going on.
Did you think that there could be a chance that this could be worse than it was?
Yeah,
And then when you got there, you were told that within 20 minutes that she would need emergency surgery.
Yeah.
Again, terrifying for a mother of a newborn child.
It was just, I thought it was just a nightmare. I didn't know what to do or what to think. There was nobody there really to answer questions because she was so ill. The doctors, the nurses were all working with Chloe.
And then you were thinking at that stage that this is bad, you've got to the Royal. The good news, I suppose, is that the baby's still alive. More news was to come that 8 vital links to the heart were missing. This sounds pretty serious. I mean, what was going through your mind when you were told this?
I just thought, I didn't think she was going to get the surgery because she was so ill. I thought, this isn't going to happen. We're going to lose our baby.
Was this the firstborn?
No, I had Natalie, who was 2 years older than Chloe, and she had a hole in her heart as well, but she's fine, you know, and I wasn't really...
So this was your second
Yes,
baby? This was your second baby. Doctors didn't know if she would make it through at that stage, and, you know, on the 11th of December then, Chloe was born, as was said, but she didn't get her surgery until the 20th of December. Now that's 9 days of waiting. What were those 9 days like for you?
It was just horrific. Every day there was another problem. They just kept her alive if she still was in the womb. And we just were waiting. There was no bed in ICU for her, and there was no staff in ICU to nurse a baby.
In those 9 days, were things getting better or were things getting worse?
They were getting worse. She was deteriorating quickly.
Which again was terrifying.
It was terrifying.
When the surgery came then, it was actually just before Christmas. You spent your first Christmas in the clinic and got home on Boxing Night. How would you describe that Christmas for you?
Well, she had her surgery and it went well. She was good, you know, after she had that surgery, but we had another 2-year-old baby at home, and we just felt we didn't know whether we were coming or going or what we were doing, and it just was a Christmas never forget.
A terrifying time
Yeah.
for everyone.
Uh-huh.
And then the following October, Chloe had a cardiac catheterization. I hope I said that right. I mean, when you were told this, did you know what that was at that stage?
They had explained all that to us before, but John, my husband, was away when I got the word that Chloe was going in. It literally was come in the next day. He was away with the lifeboat over in England, and I had to make that decision myself, whether for her to go or not. So I did, and she went and they found out then that the problems were worse than what.
They definitely were,
Yeah.
and they were even worse for you because during this time you were pregnant with another child, and you were told that this child also had medical problems, that the child, when it was born, would need a liver transplant. A lot going on during that time as well. I mean, what was going through your head during those days?
It was just crazy. Just was so hard.
How did you, I mean, you've so much going on there, such a hard time. How did you find strength? How did you keep it all going?
I kept working, and just my family were so good. My mum and dad were just super, and John, and I still had Natalie, who was 3 by then, and I still had Chloe, and I just had to keep going. I worked.
You had to keep going for
Yeah.
everyone else,
Yeah.
whilst they all supported you at the same
Yeah,
time.
uh-huh.
So it was a mutual agreement between
Uh-huh.
yourselves, you would keep it
Yeah.
alive. On the 30th of March in 2001, that's when you got the call to say that Chloe was going in for surgery. But around that time as well, I mean, you were pregnant at this stage. When you were getting ready for Chloe, you were getting things organised. This is when you went into early labour and you were rushed to the hospital after that. More bad news was to come. What happened then?
When I rang the ambulance to say that my waters had broke, or I rang the hospital. They wanted to send an ambulance and I just did not. I lived in a park in the middle of Kilkeel. I didn't want everybody knowing, and I says, no, we'll go up in the car. So whenever I arrived up at the hospital, the baby Alana still was living, but we knew there wasn't much hope for her because her liver and her bowels were outside, and that she was going to need a liver transplant. So we just let nature take its course, and Alana then was stillborn that night, and that must have
been tough as well.
It was very tough, you know. It was just, didn't even get a chance to even think about her, knowing what was ahead of us the next few days.
And the next few days was that Chloe was going in for surgery. Chloe went in the Monday for her surgery on the Tuesday, but around that time you then had to bury your baby Alana.
We buried her on the Sunday, and Chloe went in. She had to be in for 8 o'clock on the Monday morning for open heart surgery. And the last child that got that surgery done didn't make it, and we had this in our head as well.
How did you stay so positive during this time?
I don't know where we got the strength from. We just kept positive, you know, and just kept going on, and just for Chloe's sake we just had to give her our
so
best.
In a way you had to put your energy onto Chloe rather than going through the grievance procedure for Alana. Following that then, there was an 8-hour surgery with Chloe. She came out of it, and 3 days in intensive care before she was moved back through the clinic. Another tough 3 days.
It was really, really tough. I hadn't been well myself. Just I think it was the shock of everything, and it was horrendous. You know, just crazy.
Did you ever think that you would lose Chloe at that
We
stage?
did, yeah. That was going through our minds all the time, and she just was lying there so helpless, and there was nothing we could do. But she, you know, every day she was getting stronger, and we were glad when we got the news that she was able to go back to Clark Clinic. She was doing really well.
And from there, I mean, things did start to improve from there. You said that you couldn't believe the difference once you seen her after a few days.
We had a pink baby before Chloe was blue. You know, we had a pink. Her colour was great. She needed very little physio. She just was so determined. You know, just fought the whole way to get better.
Things started to look up from that point then. That was a change around for you. Would you say that's a turning point?
Definitely, yeah.
You said as well that, you know, I read an article which you were featured in. You asked the question, what did I do wrong? You felt guilty for Chloe. Any mother would feel guilty for their child going through this. Why do you think that you felt so much guilt that it was your fault, even though you had no control over it?
I felt had I ate something, was eating something wrong, doing something wrong, you know, it was me that carried Chloe, and I felt it was something I had done wrong, you know, and I just wanted answers so that it wouldn't happen again.
From there then, Chloe's health progressed in the years, but I mean, from there, you know, it wasn't all good. And Chloe, I turn to you now for your experience of all of this. Obviously you don't remember the majority of that as a baby, I wouldn't say. If you do, you're spectacular. I mean, your experience of this disease, I mean, what do you know of it? What is your experience of it?
I don't remember any of that. I just sort of remember going up to the hospital for like yearly checks and just being explained gradually about it, and it never really bothered me.
It's never bothered you?
No.
Does it affect your day-to-day life at all? Does it have any impact on it?
Not really, maybe just PE or something, like, because it's not visible, people don't understand why I maybe can't run for as long, but it doesn't really bother me.
Doesn't bother you
It's
too
way
much.
excuse.
But then you've said, you know, whenever you were in school as well, there was some days that you felt tired and you know
Yeah.
you had to leave early and things like that. So there was at times that it did affect you, but it didn't
Yeah.
affect you too much because you never took a day off school in your life, did you?
No.
Not once. Following this then, I mean, just recently, a couple of years ago, you developed scoliosis. I mean, you know more about this than you do, I suppose, about the heart
Yeah.
issue. I mean, what do you know about the scoliosis?
It means your spine just keeps on bending, and you can't really stop it until you get surgery for it, and it just sort of progresses.
What about this? Does this affect you in any way? Is it painful?
Yeah, it's more painful, and like I can't really lift things for too long before it gets sore, and just any exercise or activity after a while my back would get quite sore, and then the visibility of it as well, like certain clothes and stuff, and people would say something to you about it, and that would affect me more than not being able to do stuff.
Do you find that hard?
I would find that quite hard, but then like at the time it's hard on you, but then like
But,
you
I
can't
mean,
help it, it's not gonna
Yeah,
go
you're a
away.
strong person, and you know you have a very positive attitude about it. I mean, whenever you were 6 years old, you were the cover girl for Northern Bank's 2007 calendar, and you've been on many billboards to promote chest, heart, and stroke charities, the Baby Appeal as well. I mean, you're standing as a voice for these things to say that there can be positive to come out for it.
Yeah.
Is that why you're doing all of this?
Yeah, because so many people look at it and be like, oh, better, you know, just keep her away from all that. But, I mean, the more you do, the better it becomes, because, like, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, you can still live. Like, you're not gonna, the more you do stuff, like, it doesn't really affect me anymore, because if you don't let something affect you, it won't affect you.
And you just want to be normal. You just
Yeah.
want to be like everybody else. I mean, you're very successful as well in everything that you've achieved. I mean, you're at the top of the class in your first and your second year. You've performed in your school musical, your grade 5 singing exam as well. Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, you're achieving a lot in your life. Why do you think that you want to get on so much? Why are you so determined to succeed?
Just so nothing holds me back. Like, I wouldn't want people to think that this was holding me back, because it's not. It's, I mean, anybody can do anything they want, like, if they put their mind to it.
Do you think that all of this actually drives you a wee bit further?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like, if somebody says, oh, no, just you don't do that, Chloe. I'll go and do it.
That's a very good attitude to have. I mean, from all of this, from all of these negative experiences that you've had in your life, many of them I suppose you don't really remember, what positive do you bring out of this? What positives?
Appreciating life more. Like, there are people 10 times worse off, but I mean, it was just a journey, but I mean, I came out of it at the end.
And you wanna keep positive. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah,
Is it important to have a positive attitude? I mean, how important
Yeah.
is it?
it's probably the most important
The most
thing.
important thing. And do you think
Yeah.
that we can all learn from your experience that no matter what we go through, that we can have a positive attitude and get through anything?
Yeah.
Chloe, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on today. Brenda, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank
Yous are
you.
both fantastic, and I wish you all the best.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this short break. Thank you so much to Brenda and Chloe for sharing their lovely story, and I hope you are now more informed of what exactly congenital heart disease is. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you same day, same time next week, Friday 7 p.m. on Destination Insight. See you then.